Welcome to part 2 of the RLD Basics tutorials. In this video, we're going to be covering input and data input apps. If you're interested how we got here, go check out part 1. So let's start by going to Input Forms on the left here and clicking on Manage. We're going to make a new input form, and you'll notice that it automatically gives us a name and a default description. Let's go ahead and click on the input form to start editing it. Now, you'll notice a few things immediately. We've got this middle area that I can click and drag to move. It has our little iPad layout here. On the left, we have all of the things that we can drag into this area. So if you see me drag some text. And then on the right, we have all the options that exist for all this stuff. So the first one you'll see is form name up here. Let's go ahead and change the form name. So I'm going to call this my mental health tracker app input. Very cool. A little bit of a long name. Next, I want to change this from being an iPad to a phone because I want this app to work on my phone. So I'll click Layout, and I'll click on the little phone icon here. Very cool. And while I'm here, I am a dark mode guy myself, so I'll go ahead and make the background gray, and I can even change the opacity if I want. Now for this app, we're going to be tracking 3 things. We want to track the amount of time I spend on activities, what each activity is that I'm spending time on, and then how I feel about them. So let's get started by putting in a number input for the amount of time that I spend on activities. So I'll go ahead and click on number input and drag it into the phone here. And I want to change the size of it a little bit. You'll notice all of these little points around that you can use to change the size. It's very intuitive. And I'm going to go ahead and change the color as well. I'm going to make it a nice green, change its opacity to 100. Now, whenever you make a new field, the best thing to do is go to Field Configuration and give it a name that identifies it. In this case, I'm going to have it be time. Pretty easy, and it'll let us know that this is the field that we're working with later on in the product when we get to some other videos. Now let's go ahead and let the user know that this is the time field. So I'll grab some text here, the label, and I'm going to go ahead and change its color under Font Settings to white. And I'm going to go ahead and change it from saying text here to time spent. Boom. I'll go ahead and change the size a little bit, move a couple things around. And there we go. This is a great starting point and a good time to show you the preview button at the top. So I click the preview tab, it'll bring me to this, which is emulating a phone here and what our form will look like when it's on that phone. You'll notice over here I have field time and the current value isn't in there. If I go ahead and type 1, however, you'll see it updates to the current value. And at the bottom here, it even tells you that I did it 11 seconds after I started up the input form. We'll get a little bit more into this in a bit, but let's go finish our form. So the other thing we wanted to track was what activity we had done during that day that we spent this time on. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this field. You might have noticed that I clicked on this little duplicate button here. There are also a couple other options you'll notice. Up here I can delete a field. Over here I can rotate a field. And over here I can lock a field so I can't move it. So after duplicating this, I'm going to go ahead and change the text on it by going to Words and Labels and change it to Activities. And what we're going to do is we want people to be able to select only one activity at a time from a list of activities. So I'm going to grab a radio. A radio allows you to present a list to your user, and they're only allowed to select one option from that list. So I'll go to my choices down here, and I'll click No Default, and let me give these some good options. Work, great activity. A lot of people do that every day. Work out, another good one. I'll add a couple more. Spent time with friends. And then I'll do one more. We'll put reading. Great. So now you can imagine we could put a whole lot more on there, but for our purposes, we're just going to keep it to the 4 for now with no default. I'll go ahead and change the text to be a lot lighter. And I'm going to go ahead to the field configuration and give this a name that'll help me identify it later. Activity. There we go. All right, very cool. Now I want to go ahead and do the mood. So I want to know what mood am I in because of this activity. So I got the time spent, I've got the actual activity. Let's go ahead and style this to look nice and do our mood. So I'm going to grab this box, I'm going to change its size over here, and I'm going to fill it 100%. And I like the green border, so I'm going to keep that there. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this again and drag it on top of the box. It's white on white, so I can't see it. I'll have to change it to black under font settings. So there we go. Instead of activities, it'll be how do you feel? Great. So I'll move this a little bit more to the center. And now let's go do some buttons. It'll give us a chance to make it look exactly how we want and give people a better idea of what mood they're selecting rather than something like a radio. So let me go ahead and grab this right here and let me change the words and labels on this to our first option. Great. I feel great after doing that activity. Now I want each of these buttons to kind of represent exactly what this feeling is. So great is going to be green, a nice light green. Go ahead and make it the right size and give it a name. Felt great. Awesome. Now let's duplicate that so we have the exact same looking button. Put it over on the other side here, and we'll call this one Felt Good. Fantastic. We'll change the label to be good, and we'll change the color to be a little bit off green. Great. Okay, now let's do another one. Let's make this one okay. So hey, I felt okay about that thing that I did. Felt okay. Change the words and labels to okay, and we'll change it to have a kind of yellowish color. And our last one will be felt bad. So I'll go ahead and change the field configuration to felt bad. I'll change the words and labels to bad, and I'll give it a nice red color here. Awesome. All right, whenever you're getting close to being done with your form like we are right now, the best thing to do is go check out the preview again to make sure it's looking and acting exactly how you want. So I'm going to act like I'm putting all this information myself. I'll go ahead and say, hey, I spent about 2 hours on this activity, and that activity was working out. And I feel great after that. And you'll notice over here on time, we have 2. Activity is workout, and felt great was clicked at 9.6 seconds into using the form. Even tells me all the timing right down here. There's only one problem. I can't submit anything. Well, that's a big problem, so let me show you how to put a submit button down here on the form. So we'll go grab another button, pick your simple or your square. I'm going to go with the square, and I'm going to go ahead and change the words and labels to submit, and I'm going to change the field name to submit as well. Now, here's the magic. I'm going to go to button extra actions, and under form, I'll see 2 things. Submit. That allows me to submit my form in its current state, and reset. So once it is submit, it'll reset the whole form. So now, if I go back to preview, should see that submit button. I'll put in 2 hours for my activity of working out. I felt great doing it. It all looks good to me. I'll click submit, and bam, the emulator knows you just tried to submit, and it allows you to decide if you're really going to submit that or if you were just testing things out. Well, I would love to have this information in there, so I'm going to click confirm. And look at that. The entire form reset, and I even put some data into my database. And the coolest part about all of this is that not only does it work on this emulation, but if I go to Real Life Data website and click on Input, I'll actually see that it's right there. And if I decide to emulate a phone, so right now I'm emulating an iPhone 12 Pro, and I click on this, it actually loads up, and I can do everything with it that I'd like and submit this data if I would like as well. So there you go. That's how easy it is to get these forms working for real life data. And now people can actually input data into your forms, and you can continue on with the rest of your RLD project. Just as a quick wrap up, you'll see in summary, we even have some data coming in now since we did that one submit, and you'll see it down here. So the next video in this tutorial is actually going to cover a lot of this data set stuff, and how we can look at the data that we just put in to our form.